They were all guilty. I felt it the moment they boarded, how they lowered their heads to avoid eye contact with me. Guilt has a scent, if you know how to recognize it. Damp leaves left too long in the dark, sweat clinging to skin that never quite feels clean, something stale and rotting just beneath the surface. It filled the bus, thick enough to taste. I drove bus 761, not 761, 761. I have never been late, not once. Tardiness was unacceptable in my line of work. I always made sure that my passengers arrived on time. The Acheron highway stretched endlessly ahead of me, black asphalt shimmering under a hazy sky where the sun struggled to break through. The bus rattled as it picked up speed, its black lower half and red-painted roof chipped and peeling, as if the vehicle itself was shedding pieces of its past. Inside, the fluorescent lights flickered overhead, each pothole sending a shudder through the frame, each jolt making the passengers shift uncomfortably in their seats. Mr. Wortley sat directly behind me, and I watched him through the rearview mirror more than I watched the road. His dry and cracked lips moved constantly, whispering to no one. Sweat gathered along his brow and rolled down his face, soaking into the collar of his blue overalls as he scratched at the inflamed skin of his neck. Flakes of dead skin dusted his shoulders. He picked at the corners of his eyes, wiping the residue onto his sleeve without noticing. He hadn't always been like this. Once was a respectable and successful businessman. Yet grief has a way of hollowing people out, and when his wife left, he filled the emptiness with heroin, then with something worse. The voices came next, then the attempt to end his own life, then the murder. That was when I noticed him. That was when he became mine. He gripped the seat in front of him so tightly I thought he might tear it apart. But when our eyes met in the mirror, he loosened his hold, tapping his fingers nervously instead. "Are we there yet?" he rasped. "Shut up, Mr. Wortley," I replied. He muttered to himself and sunk back into his seat. Beside him sat Mrs. Beckert. She nudged him gently, offering a soft smile. Her hands clutched a wicker picnic basket in her lap, and she rocked her body back and forth while humming a hymn from some long-forgotten Sunday service. Her eyes moved constantly, greeting every passenger, lingering just a little longer on the men who reminded her of her grandson. "You look just like him," she told anyone who'd listen. Her guilt was quieter than Wortley's, but no less heavy. It lingered in the wrinkles of her face, in the way her smile stretched just a little too far, in the careful way she avoided mentioning her husband unless she spoke to me. I remembered him well. A year ago, he'd boarded this same bus, cheerful and talkative, placing his coin into the box before launching into a rambling story about his marriage. I told him I didn't care. They always want to explain themselves, as if context might change the destination. When he realized where he was, his eyes bulged and his body convulsed. He collapsed to his knees, clutching his chest, begging me not to take him. He said he didn't deserve this, but they always say that. I told him to get up, take his seat, and be quiet. He sobbed the rest of the way. They all do, eventually. The bus slowed as we approached the next stop. A man and a woman stood waiting on the corner, clinging to each other like they could still choose not to be here. I chuckled and noticed the woman overlooking my bus. Her mouth trembled and she bit her lower lip. Her eyes blinked constantly. It was an expression that I enjoyed viewing. Their fear placed an almost permanent snicker on my face. I pulled the lever. The doors creaked open. "Get on," I said. They hesitated. "Get on," I repeated in a deeper voice. The woman shook her head and glanced at the man, her husband, who calmly placed his arm around her waist. "We only have one coin," he said, finally. I noticed the way his eyes flickered between me and her. He wanted to give it to her, not to save her, but to save himself. Typical. I reached into my coat and tossed them another coin. "Get on," I said again. This time, they obeyed. The doors slammed shut behind them, sealing their choice in place. Approaching the last stop, I decreased speed, slamming on the brakes. The tires screeched and white smoke billowed from underneath the bus. The last passenger, Mr. Williamson, a dark-haired man, was hesitant to enter the bus. He was dressed in a brown business suit, with a black tie slightly pushed to the right. He gripped a silver suitcase in his left hand. The air was still, and the sound of the bus's engine was swallowed by the eerie silence. I gently tapped the coin box, and he stopped in front of it, placing his coin in the box. He took the first available seat behind Mr. Wortley. Mrs. Beckert smiled at him immediately. "You look just like my grandson." He smiled faintly, but his hands trembled as he adjusted his sleeves, trying to hide the deep cuts running along his wrists. The blood seeped through anyway. Mrs. Beckert pulled a napkin from her basket and handed it over gently. "You're making a mess, sweetie." Williamson nodded his thanks, dabbing at the blood, as if cleanliness still mattered. I pressed harder on the gas. The speedometer climbed. 100. 115. The bus began to sway violently, the frame groaning as it tore down the highway. "Stop the bus!" Wortley screamed, yanking the cord until it snapped free in his hands. I laughed. The engine roared louder, drowning out their voices as the world outside began to blur, the colors bleeding together into something redder, darker, more familiar. The needle passed 130. Even if I wanted to explain it to them, I couldn't. There aren't words for what waits at the end of this route. Only sensation. Only certainty. A place shaped perfectly for each of them. A place that smells like their guilt, sounds like their regrets, stretches endlessly beneath their feet. Their final destination. Their screams filled the bus, echoing and overlapping, and I leaned back slightly in my seat, listening, waiting, enjoying the ride.